Welcome to the 2018 seasons of the Wealth Standard Podcast, celebrating life, liberty, and property. You are listening to Liberty, Season 2.
Hi, everyone. This is Patrick Donahoe. Welcome to the Wealth Standard Podcast. We are in our second season. It is episode 14, and it is going to be me flying solo today. If you are a first-time listener, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. I would highly encourage you to go back and scroll through the past podcasts that we've had. We've had some cool guests on, really awesome conversations. We have our first season that has already been completed, and this is, of course, the second one, as I mentioned. But the first season was based on the principle of life and the whole life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Obviously, pursuit of happiness with the Declaration of Independence, but the pursuit of property was kind of a phrase that was coined by a philosopher named John Locke back in England, pre American Revolution times. And so the idea was to take what he claimed, what he gave his life for, sacrifices his life for to an extent, to bring out certain principles that I believe are certainly relevant today and could provide the education and understanding of how you can accomplish the life of your dreams, financial freedom, etc. So if you want to go back and check out the first season, I think you'll like it. There was some cool stuff in there. And this is the second season. We're talking about liberty, which is freedom. Now, if you are a first-time listener, you maybe you've come across the book that was written recently called Heads I Win, Tails You Lose, and it's something I worked on for a really long time, and I'm really happy with. I'm glad that it was able to be put out. It took forever, but the group that helped me to release it was absolutely amazing, and the audiobook should be out shortly. So definitely go to Amazon. If you haven't read the book and pick it up. It's on Kindle as well, and then it'll be on Audible very soon. All right, so let's dive into it. Now, I'm here at the end of the day. There's nobody around, and just in my studio, up in our office, and I'm just going to get kind of right to the point with some of the principles that we've been talking about in this season, and ensure that there's an understanding of why we decided to go this route as far as these 3 seasons are concerned. So the first season was, intentional, and it was to really focus on the ideas behind how our country, despite its flaws and shortcomings, has thrived so much and continues to do so if you really think about it. And it's because of these three principles: life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Life is what I consider, reading through John Locke and trying to understand what he was saying. And during that, pre-revolutionary time, there wasn't really freedom. People weren't given certain rights, and it affected their ability to grow, to thrive, to prosper. And so he, understood that and wrote about it under pen names, under the cloak of anonymity, and essentially gave up his life to an extent, at least putting it on the altar to get these ideas out there so that other people would understand and push for freedom. And ultimately, his writings, as well as a slew of other people, made its way over to the American continent, and that really formed a philosophy that initiated, the first of its kind, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, a war, a really bad war. But ultimately, it created the environment in which there was the greatest human progress since we have records. And so that's where I wanted to really peel apart and layer by layer as far as what that principle of life really means. So go listen to that first season. But the principle today and the principle of this season is liberty, which I look at as freedom. And there's many elements to freedom, but because this is a financially focused podcast in a sense, it is financial freedom and what that means. And so what I've prepared for today is to look at financial freedom in 2 ways, both in investments that you make and financial products that you use, as well as you and what I talked about extensively in the first season, which is life, which is you are your greatest asset. But it's the principle of you. And oftentimes I think that people put investments as the catalyst or money as the catalyst to financial freedom. I think those support it, but you will never be financially free if that's all the focus is. Financial freedom, I would say, comes from being able to understand. Well, first off, I would say it's the elimination of fear. It's not being afraid that you won't be able to pay your bills, or you're afraid that you won't be able to support your family or feed yourself. And I think there's a lot of anxiety out there, and I think it's because people are relying on third parties that they don't control, okay, to provide for their well-being. So the principle of freedom is essentially to have that understanding, that mentality that you have talents, abilities, experience, certification, whatever, that's valuable to somebody else, in which they will pay you for it. And that understanding is, what in the book we called your human capital assets, okay, is vital to understand, and also the mentality that this isn't this. There isn't an end to this game, right? There isn't an end to this pursuit. It is the lifetime pursuit of the principle of mastery. And it's mastering something that you've identified as something you're passionate about, something others value in you. And I think that idea and the interaction of people is what gives life a lot of its meaning. And so the idea is, how do you pursue that and ultimately achieve really true financial freedom? And so first, it's believing that, which definitely conflicts with the common financial practices of today, where financial services, financial planners focus all the value inside of financial assets, investments, accounts, and so forth, that they are going to provide for your well-being. But I really believe that it's for me, but it's also from the study that I've done. It's from the experiences I've actually had with thousands of people, right? That even though you may have a huge bank account, even though you have a lot of investments, people are not financially free there. So it's essentially ensuring that there is the proper balance, right, between, number one, having those accounts, those investments, those products support you and the pursuit of finding something that is in you that is most valuable to other people. All right, so this is where I'll kind of deviate and get into a framework that I find absolutely fascinating, which is the BI triangle by Robert Kiyosaki. And it's interesting because there's not a lot of information that's out there on the BI triangle. And I believe the first instance was in Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. And then there's a few things on the richdad.com website. But I think this idea is absolutely brilliant. And we'll make sure that we put an image in the show notes. But there's not a lot of information on it. But some good friends of ours who are also clients and Rich Dad advisors, Josh and Lisa Lannon, they build all of their businesses based on what they understand of the BI triangle. And so I'm going to try to help you, kind of break down what this is and how it relates to, number one, you, but also how it relates to your investments and financial and business relationships. So the BI triangle, if you can envision a triangle, has three sides, right? It's a triangle. So the first side, the foundation, the bottom, is mission. The second layer is leadership. So on the right side, you have leadership and of the triangle, and on the left side of the triangle, you have team. Now, I'm not going to get into all of it right now. Those are the three most important parts that really house the elements inside the triangle. But inside the triangle, there are different levels. The bottom level is cash flow. Then you have communications, then you have systems, then you have legal, and then you have the actual product or service. So I'm going to focus on just a couple pieces of the outside triangle, and I'm going to pick up on that, the other pieces next week. All right, so the first piece is mission. Now, mission is one of those things where it's a word often used, but has a lot of different meanings to it. Not saying one is right or one is wrong. They're probably all right. But I want to at least tell you what I understand about the principle of mission. Okay, mission is essentially the foundation because it is the driving force behind whatever that business or investment is. And I would say if you're looking at yourself as an investment, as an asset, okay, you need to know what drives you. And that discovery process is powerful because that's how you identify what's going to be most valuable to other people. If you can figure out what that talent, ability, passion, etc. is, and how to translate that into a service or a product that others would value and exchange money with you for. So this driving force, I think it's a constant pursuit. And there are a lot of books out there. The ones that I've resonated the most with that are very simple are by Simon Sinek, which is Start with Why and Find Your Why. And plus, he has some amazing TED Talks. He's an incredible speaker. I prefer watching the way in which he teaches rather than reading a book. But the books are also incredible, and they help kind of break down the powerful nature of why and what that driving force is behind you. But I think mission, this foundation, goes beyond that. And what I would say beyond that is also the principles that you subscribe to, or the values and principles that you subscribe to. What do I mean by that? So when people make decisions, you have a rational side of the human brain, you have an irrational side of the human brain, and oftentimes, especially in stressful situations, anxious situations, the irrational side kicks in. The anger, the fear, the hate, the jealousy, those often produce and drive bad behavior, and so all human beings have that. We all have that element in us, and that's it's why bad stuff happens. However, the purpose of core values and principles, right, is that they are so strong and embedded in your core that when those opportunities to exercise on those irrational thoughts and irrational reactions, okay, are mitigated and buffered because you have these driving principles that are the core of your life. And so I'm going to give you, some of the values that are here at my company that I've identified as certain attributes to understand, values to understand, so that in those moments where there is anxiety, there is fear, that these are values in which you can make decisions by and have certain outcomes. So the first one is humility. I think humility is powerful because I think there's a drive, especially in our social media world, to be driven by ego, right? To be driven by maximizing our self-esteem, self-worth. However, humility oftentimes prevents us from thinking we know everything, thinking we've arrived and I'm the expert and nobody knows more than me. So the idea of humility is always being willing to say, there's something I can learn. It may be right, it may be wrong, but I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, and either reinforce what I understand already, or to maybe tweak or change my perspective. So humility is one of the ways in which we here at my company make decisions, where if somebody has an opinion about something, we respect and highly regard that opinion. However, if there is another opinion that is better, or it creates more efficiency or creates more then the person who had the other opinion isn't hurt by it or isn't offended by it. Okay, courage is another thing, which is not being afraid to fail, not being afraid to make a mistake, which I think is also part of the human condition, and I would say it's definitely reinforced by our school system. But the idea of courage, which is going out on a limb, trying it. If you're afraid, make the decision. We also have a principle called the pursuit of mastery, which kind of goes in line with humility, which is always learning, always tweaking, perfecting, and improving yourself or something else. Okay, so the idea of mission, again, it's a driving force behind why you do what you do. It's that fuel that empowers you to find what is the most amount of value you can provide to somebody else, okay, that is specific to you. And I think that I know that is definitely part of kind of the financial freedom equation. And so that drive, I would also say, translates over to how you assess relationships, whether it's an investment you make, whether it's a business that you align with, because oftentimes businesses are set up to make money. And I get that. I mean, that's, you want a business to make money. That's why part of the BI triangle is cash flow and understanding how to, read financials, understand, the different accounting measurements of what cash flow is, or profitability is, or top line revenue, bottom line revenue. The idea of a mission, the idea of understanding the why behind a business. If they have, if they are profitable, if they are successful as business and they're making money, okay, the idea of their mission is vital in my opinion. And it may not be why they're doing it. I think that's going to be important. But I always look to, okay, if things don't go as planned, how are they going to make decisions? If the economy changes, if a new legislation comes out, or maybe one of the projects failed, if they are presented with things they did not anticipate, how are they going to make a decision? And the investments that I've seen fail, and I've seen hundreds, probably thousands of investments fail, it is not necessary. It's rarely because the idea wasn't sound. It is because the underlying structure that supports that idea did not have these elements intact, or at least understood by the team or the business as a whole. Okay, so really, understanding mission, not just for yourself, not just for maybe your business or your life, but also understanding that of others, the mission, the core values, the purpose that is driving a person. That is vital. And questions around that is usually where I turn before I want to know about the characteristics of the investment or the details of the investment. Okay, so that's mission. That's mission, which is this kind of ongoing learning process in my perspective. Then let's get into team, and this is where I'll end. Team is, I would say, a word that is used, but rarely do you find well-run teams, and I find it absolutely brilliant and inspiring to see how teams operate. I think if you look at the movie Miracle that talks about the 1981 Olympic ice hockey team who won the gold and beat Russia. That movie, I have that movie on my iPad. It's the only movie that's has its staying place in my iPad. It's an incredibly inspiring movie, and it looks it really identifies some of the core elements of a team and how it thrives and operates. But also the Moneyball. I think that's a brilliant movie that talks about ways in which a team is created, and I would say even though it's mathematically and algorithmically influenced, there was still some leadership and team element to it that definitely solidified everything. But the idea of team is this. Now, when it comes to you, I find that one of the biggest drawbacks that prevent success and financial freedom is that people think that they need to do everything. They need to hustle. They need to work really hard. They need to work 12-hour days, be willing to work harder than others, and do everything themselves. I think that is very limiting and creates burnout. So the idea of team is, number one, asking the questions of, what role do I play on a team? Whether that's in your family, whether that's in your business, if you're self-employed, what are the roles and responsibilities that are conducive with me, with what gives me energy, what I am an expert at, and that others aren't? Those are the focus places of one team member. However, that requires that other responsibilities, other aspects of a business or of a family dynamic is essentially performed by someone else. And I'll give a simple example with just a very, very stereotypical family who, has to do their tax returns every year, and file them, and make sure hopefully they get a refund, but it's something they have to do by law. Some people cut corners and use, they do it themselves, or they may use a program like TurboTax, or they may use H&R Block, and they're trying to cut costs there, but they realize that those may not be the experts, and I'm not the expert, even though they could do it on their own. But if they had an expert do it, even though it may cost them some money, they will gain because of what the expert could essentially do to save them on taxes. And this is a narrative that, my good friend Tom Wheelwright, who wrote the foreword to the book, talks about all the time. And so that's just kind of in a simple family dynamic. But it's also, when it comes to a business, and you can use it as an investment as well, is that in a business you may play a functional role, but because it might be a small business, it might be even a medium-sized business, you find yourself doing things because they need to be done your way, and because nobody else can do it better than you, but it's not something that you're great at and it's not something that you like doing, I think that's dangerous to keep doing it. So the idea behind a team, right, is to understand the dynamic, right, of other roles where you're able to focus on what your core responsibilities, talents, abilities, things that drive you, things you're passionate about, and only focus there, and then ensure that there is a team member that is equally inspired, passionate, trained, has the talents and abilities, right, to perform that task or area of responsibility. That, I believe, is kind of the ideal team. Now, easier said than done, but at the same time, this is why it's an ongoing pursuit, is developing, right, an understanding of how functional, productive teams work. Now, this is definitely at the core of investment, because investment, especially large-scale investment, if there aren't good teams that are supporting it, you're going to have inefficiency, which increases risk and reduces return, and also puts more stress on you, because when investments don't perform, most people aren't really cool with that, and it doesn't make them giddy, right? When investments don't perform, that provides a tremendous amount of anxiety. So looking at how to analyze an investment, rarely do I see individuals asking questions about the team first. It's always the rate of return. When are they going to get their money? What are the fees? It's never about who is the team behind that business that is going to help the idea, the product, the service perform. The team is way, in my opinion, my experience, the team is the catalyst to making good returns. And so understanding the team dynamic, understanding that, those nuances and asking questions around that, I think is a great way to do due diligence on an investment. But as this relates to you, right, it's something I talked about in the book, and I'll end with this, which is the human capital statement. And it's something I learned a number of years ago that I always think about. And it's the asset column and the liability column of the human capital statement. The asset column is what I've been talking about. It's your strengths, your abilities, your natural born abilities, the things that drive you and make you passionate, and also that you've seen make a difference in others' lives. That's where the focus should be, that type of asset. And it could be a couple of different characteristics. It could be you're a good leader. It could be you're a good software developer. It could be you're good at business strategy or tax strategy. It could be you're good at writing songs or producing music or producing film. The list goes on. Okay, those are your assets. However, in order for those things to be valuable, other roles are typically required. Those are liabilities. Now, those liabilities are essentially the assets of somebody else. You just have to find those somebody else's and pay them. And when you pay them, those are expenses. That's money going out of your pocket. However, when you're maximizing your assets, that's money going into your pocket. And the idea is that you are collecting more money than you are paying out. And typically, if you are delegating, you have delegating to other people, delegating to those human capital liabilities. Okay, you're dedicating resources to them in order to improve yours, which produces more income. That's the ideal. All right, so this is what I wanted to talk about today, and start to try to bring home the principle of financial freedom, where there are certain elements to work on over time, right, in order to position yourself where you are performing a service, right, that aligns with who you are, what your abilities, your talents, your passions are, that is for the benefit of somebody else in which they are willing to pay you. And I believe that is a lifelong pursuit. If that exchange is ever stopped, I believe that negatively affects the human soul, the passion, the drive, the mission, and it ends up killing people. And there's lots of evidence of that. I believe people are wired to provide meaningful work to others, and it doesn't stop at a certain point, such as retirement. So financial freedom is discovering that, finding it is a process of discovering it, finding it, and then figuring out how to translate that into a product or a service for the benefit of others. And then the BI triangle is really something I wanted to bring up and talk through about, the foundational element, I would say the most important element that supports the entire triangle, that base of the triangle, which is mission. What is driving the business? What is driving the service or the product? And then it's teamwork. Teamwork, team is essentially the identification of what your assets are, your abilities are, and then also the liabilities of others that can help you leverage your assets, your natural born, your abilities, your talents, your passions, etc. So I've said those words a lot today, but they're vital to really discovering and living as free as possible. All right, so next week what I want to do is really get into the other side of the triangle, which is leadership. Then I'm going to talk about cash flow and talk about communication and systems, because I believe that there's a lot of wisdom inside the BI triangle, and it supports this notion of positioning your life so that you are the most financially free possible. And that requires, number one, identifying in yourself, okay, what the most meaningful value you can provide to somebody else in return for their capital and their money. But it's also how to structure your financial products, your investments, okay, using that exact same model, which is understanding the underlying mission, team, leadership, and so forth, which I think will make you a better investor, a more educated investor. And when you have more education, then you are able to ask better questions. And when you ask better questions, you're able to do due diligence at a much deeper level and mitigate the risk associated with giving your money to somebody else. All right, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Like I said in the beginning, go back and listen to previous podcasts. There's a lot of cool guests on there. It's such a blessing to be able to talk to these people that are so smart, that have written books, that have found their passion, and are trying to instill wisdom in others. So go back, check those out. And then next week, like I said, we are going to get into the principle of leadership and maybe some of the initial levels of the BI triangle, so that you have the knowledge, the wisdom, the tools, the direction to achieve that level of financial freedom for yourself. All right, that's it, everyone. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for joining us as the Wealth Standard Podcast spends all of 2018 celebrating life, liberty, and property. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, and we'll see you on the next one.